a passage from C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia. Volume 6, The Silver Chair, chapter titled The Queen of Underland. The passage in question helps us understand what modern Christianity is about, how it departs from classical, which is to say both ancient and medieval Christianity. It helps us see how Romanticism has distracted us from the core Platonic lesson of Christianity, classical Christianity. Let us consider this somewhat extended passage. Now the witch said nothing at all, but moved gently across the room, always keeping her face and eyes very steadily toward the prince. When she had come to a little ark set in the wall, not far from the fireplace, she opened it, and took out first a handful of a green powder. This she threw on the fire. It did not blaze much, but a very sweet and drowsy smell came from it. And all through the conversation which followed, that smell grew stronger, and filled the room and made it harder to think. Secondly, she took out a musical instrument rather like a mandolin. She began to play it with her fingers, a steady, monotonous thrumming that you didn't notice after a few minutes. But the less you noticed it, the more it got into your brain and your blood. This also made it hard to think. After she had thrummed for a time, and the sweet smell was now strong, she began speaking in a sweet, quiet voice. "Narnia," she said, "Narnia. I have often heard your lordship utter that name in your ravings. Dear prince, you are very sick. There is no land called Narnia." "Yes, there is, though, ma'am," said Puddleglum. "You see, I happen to have lived there all my life." "Indeed," said the witch. "Tell me, I pray you, where that country is." "Up there," said Puddleglum, stoutly, pointing overhead. I don't know exactly where." "How?" said the queen, with a kind, soft, musical laugh. "Is there a country up among the stones and mortar on the roof?" "No," said Puddleglum, struggling a little to get his breath. "It's an overworld." "And what or where, pray, is this, how do you call it, overworld?" "Oh, don't be so silly," said Scrub, who was fighting hard against the enchantment of the sweet smell and the thrumming. "As if you didn't know. It's up above, up where you can see the sky and the sun and the stars. Why, you've been there yourself. We met you there." "I cry, oh, you mercy, little brother," laughed the witch. "You couldn't have heard a lovelier laugh. I have no memory of that meeting, but we often meet our friends in strange places when we dream. And unless all dreamed alike, you must not ask them to remember it." "Madam," said the prince sternly, "I have already told your grace that I am the king's son of Narnia." "And shalt be, dear friend," said the witch in a soothing voice, as if she was humoring a child. shalt be king of many imagined lands in thy fancies." "We've been there too," snapped Jill. She was very angry because she could feel enchantment getting hold of her every moment. But of course, the very fact that she could still feel it showed that it had not yet fully worked. "And thou art Queen of Narnia too, I doubt not, pretty one," said the witch in the same coaxing, half-mocking tone. "I'm nothing of the sort," said Jill, stamping her foot. "We come from another world." "Why, this is a prettier game than the other," said the witch. "Tell us, little maid, where is this other world? What ships and chariots go between it and ours?" Of course, a lot of things darted into Jill's head at once. Experiment house, Adela Pennyfather, her own house, radio sets, cinemas, cars, airplanes, ration books, queues, but they seemed dim and far away. Thrum, thrum, thrum went the strings of the witch's instrument. Jill couldn't remember the names of the things in our world, and this time it didn't come into her head that she was being enchanted, for now the magic was in its full strength. And of course, the more enchanted you get, the more you feel that you are not enchanted at all. She found herself saying, and at the moment it was a relief to say, "No, I suppose that other world must be all a dream." "Yes, it is all a dream," said the witch, always thrumming. "Yes, all a dream," said Jill. "There never was such a world," said the witch. "No," said Jill and Scrub, "never was such a world." "There never was any world but mine," said the witch. "There never was any world but yours," said they. Puddleglum was still fighting hard. "I don't know rightly what you all mean by a world," he said, talking like a man who hasn't enough air. "But you can play that fiddle till your fingers drop off, and still you won't make me forget Narnia, and the whole overworld too. We'll never see it again, I shouldn't wonder. You may have blotted it out and turned it dark like this, for all I know. Nothing more likely, but I know I was there once. I've seen the sky full of stars. I've seen the sun coming up out of the sea of a morning and sinking behind the mountains at night, and I've seen him up in the midday sky when I couldn't look at him for brightness." Puddleglum's words had a very rousing effect. The other three all breathed again and looked at one another like people newly awaked. "Why, there it is!" cried the prince. "Of course, the blessing of Aslan upon this honest Marshwiggle. We have all been dreaming these last few minutes. How could we have forgotten it? Of course, we've all seen the sun." "By Jove, so we have," said Scrub. "Good for you, Puddleglum. You're the only one of us with any sense, I do believe." Then came the witch's voice, cooing softly like the voice of a wood-pigeon from the high elms in an old garden at 3 o'clock in the middle of a sleepy summer afternoon, and it said, "What what is this sun that you all speak of? Do you mean anything by the word?" "Yes, we jolly well do," said Scrub. "Can you tell me what it's like?" asked the witch. Thrum, 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 went the strings. "Please it your grace," said the prince very coldly and politely, "you see that lamp? It is round and yellow, and gives light to the whole room, and hangeth moreover from the roof. Now that thing which we call the sun is like the lamp, only far greater and brighter. It giveth light to the whole overworld, and hangeth in the sky." "Hangeth from what, my lord?" asked the witch, and then, while they were all still thinking how to answer her, she added, with another of her soft silver laughs, "You see, when you try to think out clearly what this sun must be, you cannot tell me. You can only tell me it is like the lamp. Your sun is a dream, and there is nothing in that dream that was not copied from the lamp. The lamp is the real thing. The sun is but a tale, a children's story." "Yes, I see now," said Jill in a heavy, hopeless tone. "It must be so." And while she said this, it seemed to her to be very good sense. Slowly and gravely the witch repeated, "There is no sun." And they all said nothing. She repeated in a softer and deeper voice, "There is no sun." After a pause, and after a struggle in their minds, all four of them said together, "You are right. There is no sun." It was such a relief to give in and say it. "There never was a sun," said the witch. "No, there never was a sun," said the prince and the marshwiggle and the children. For the last few minutes Jill had been feeling that there was something she must remember at all costs, and now she did, but it was dreadfully hard to say it. She felt as if huge weights were laid on her lips. At last, with an effort that seemed to take all the good out of her, she said, "There's Aslan." "Aslan?" said the witch, quickening ever so slightly the pace of her thrumming. "What a pretty name! What does it mean?" "He is the great lion who called us out of our own world," said Scrub, "and sent us into this to find Prince Rilian." "What is a lion?" asked the witch. "Oh, hang it all," said Scrub. "Don't you know? How can we describe it to her? Have you ever seen a cat?" "Surely," said the queen. "I love cats." "Well, a lion is a little bit, only a little bit, mind you, like a huge cat with a mane. At least, it's not like a horse's mane, you know. It's more like a judge's wig, and it's yellow and terrifically strong." The witch shook her head. "I see," she said, "that we should do no better with your lion, as you call it, than we did with your sun. You have seen lamps, and so you imagined a bigger and better lamp and called it the sun. You've seen cats, and now you want a bigger and better cat, and it's to be called a lion. Well, 'Tis a pretty make-believe, though, to say truth, it would suit you all better if you were younger. And look how you can put nothing into your make-believe without copying it from the real world, this world of mine, which is the only world. As for you, my lord prince, that art a man full grown. Fie upon you! Are you not ashamed of such toys? Come, all of you, put away these childish tricks. I have work for you in the real world. There is no Narnia, no overworld, no sky, no sun, no Aslan. And now, to bed all, and let us begin a wiser life tomorrow. But first to bed, to sleep, deep, deep, soft pillows, sleep without foolish dreams. The prince and the two children were standing with their heads hung down, their cheeks flushed, their eyes half closed, the strength all gone from them, the enchantment almost complete. But Puddleglum, desperately gathering all his strength, walked over to the fire. Then he did a very brave thing. He knew it wouldn't hurt him quite as much as it would hurt a human, for his feet, which were bare, were webbed and hard and cold-blooded like a duck's. But he knew it would hurt him badly enough, and so it did. With his bare foot he stamped on the fire, grinding a large part of it into ashes on the flat hearth. And 3 things happened at once. First, the sweet heavy smell grew very much less, for though the whole fire had not been put out, a good bit of it had, and what remained smelled very largely of burnt marshwiggle, which is not at all an enchanting smell. This instantly made everyone's brain far clearer. The prince and the children held up their hands again and opened their eyes. Secondly, the witch, in a loud, terrible voice, utterly different from all the sweet tones she had been using up till now, called out, "What are you doing? Dare to touch my fire again, mud filth, and I'll turn the blood to fire inside your veins." Thirdly, the pain itself made Puddleglum's head for a moment perfectly clear, and he knew exactly what he really thought. There is nothing like a good shock of pain for dissolving certain kinds of magic. "One word, ma'am," he said, coming back from the fire, limping because of the pain. "One word. All you've been saying is quite right. I shouldn't wonder. I'm a chap who always liked to know the worst and then put the best face I can on it. So I won't deny any of what you said, but there's one thing more to be said even so. Suppose we have only dreamed, or made up all those things, trees and grass and sun and moon and stars and Aslan himself. Suppose we have. Then all I can say is that in that case, the made-up things seem a good deal more important than the real ones. Suppose this black pit of a kingdom of yours is the only world. Well, it strikes me as a pretty poor one. That's a funny thing when you come to think of it. We're just babies making up games, if you're right. But 4 babies playing a game can make a play world which licks your real world hollow. That's why I'm going to stand by the play world. I'm on Aslan's side, even if there isn't any Aslan to lead it. I'm going to live as like a Narnian as I can, even if there isn't any Narnia. So thanking you kindly for your supper, And that's a funny thing when you come to think of it. We're just babies making up a game, if you're right. But 4 babies playing a game can make a play world which licks your real world hollow. That's why I'm going to stand by the play world. I'm on Aslan's side, even if there isn't any Aslan to lead it. I'm going to live as like a Narnian as I can, even if there isn't any Narnia. So, thanking you kindly for our supper, if these 2 gentlemen and the young lady are ready, we're leaving your court at once and setting out in the dark to spend our lives looking for Overland. Not that our lives will be very long, I should think, but that's small loss if the world's as dull a place as you say. And it goes on, they wind up defeating the witch, breaking the spell, but how do they do this? Well, they do this thanks to the power of the imagination. Even if there were no sun, we don't really need it to defeat evil. This is the modern wager. The imagination takes precedence over what? Over what the classics call natural reason, which is none other than reason in nature. Not reason as man's own cunning, but reason as a discourse that arises out of things themselves. Not a human invention, but something that defines us. In fact, that produces us, that draws us out into the world and back to natural reason itself, its natural cradle. C.S. Lewis presents a case for modern Christianity. What if there were no Christ on the cross? What if we had only imagined all of this? And yet we would still go for it because without it, the world would be rather grim. This does not work for the classics. This position suggests that all arguments fall back onto the will. I want that dream rather than this reality. But the dream alone is not enough. We have to look for it. We have to pursue it. There is a quest for the dream, for the realization of a dream. This is modern idealism. Now, classical idealism, if we wish to speak in these terms, is incompatible, ultimately, with this wager. We trust the imagination. Because what is the alternative? The classical position tells us that this world is filled with signs. Now in C.S. Lewis we do have signs, but they get lost, forgotten, and so they are sort of echoes of the imagination at some point. But for the classics, the signs are given by nature. So yes, there is a witch. Yes, there are evil people that tend to distract us or seek to distract us from the sun. Think of the image that we find in the cave, Plato's cave myth. Everybody's looking at the interior wall of the cave and forgetting that things themselves are not shadows. The shadows there after, but what is outside of the cave. There is a real sun, there are real everything, but these things are in the mind, which is to say that they are spiritual entities. They're not merely physical shadows, tangible, fleeting things in time. But there is only this world, and you will work in this world for me, says the witch. Get a job. You'll work for me. Forget about this childish business philosophy, as they once had told Socrates. Right? That's fine as long as you're young, but if you get old, and that's ridiculous. Why would you be still worrying about and talking about mysterious hidden things? It's only dreams that you are after. So the classical position does not budge. It says, well, do you want to put me on a cross? Put me on a cross. Do you want to poison me? Get rid of me? Get rid of me. But I tell you that there are signs, that this world is made of signs. If we open up the things, asking what this thing is, turning everything, every certainty that is given to us as into a question, as a question mark. Everything becomes a question, a sign that invites us to ask, what is it? What is its nature? How is it possible that it's here? So as we begin asking simple, fundamental questions, central questions of life, as we expose ourselves to these questions, we're no longer mesmerized by the flattering, siren-like entertainment, be it shocking or soothing, that distracts us from things themselves. We are in the underworld. We are trying to remember, says Plato, the world above, the spiritual world. We have a hard time doing this. The classical position is that of seeking the signs and discovering them in the course of a questioning, an investigation. Right? Everything is a sign pointing back to the origin. The origin is the original context of all these signs. In the modern case, we don't have this. There is acceptance of a modern prejudice against the capacity of modern reason to return to God. There are various, shall we say, accidental reasons for this. One could go through a whole series of sources to see how one moves from one plane to another and further away from the Platonic classical position. But here we have it spelled out quite clearly. We don't need natural reason. What we need is dreams and then actions. An ideal, we might say, and then we have to carry it out. We have to fight physically, we might say. This is a situation that we're dealing with throughout the modern world. Today we see it exacerbated. Everybody has an ideal. Oh, I have my opinions and I hold fast. Right? I am very serious about my opinions. Right? These are my ideals. Right? and they cherish them. And I'm willing to fight for them. Ooh, everybody's willing to fight for what he believes in, right? Oh, yeah, we must. Really. And if you don't, you're a coward. Really. Thing is, our classics disagree. Perhaps it is enough to look at Socrates and the Jesus of the Gospels to see that the classics are not pursuing ideals. They're bearing witness to the signs, retracing the signs to something that is fundamental, something that is really real. So there is no concession, no hiding back in the imagination. The imagination is fine, but it offers us signs, ways of speaking also, right? But what we call real today is nothing more than a poor or poorly imagined world. A poorly imagined world. Our imagination is not very good. It's in chains. Take those chains off of our imagination. Oh, that's dangerous. No. Not a fair response. Dangerous maybe. But if there is natural reason to guide the imagination, as opposed to a machine, then there's nothing to fear from an imagination that is left spontaneous, without chains. Now we have the real king, natural reason, that guides our imagination backward to its source, to its ground. And this turning of the imagination backward to its source is none other than natural reason. How many Christians today stand for this? How many assume that God speaks in my feelings as opposed to my reason? Who would, in his right mind, assume that God speaks in our reason as long as reason is conceived as something unnatural? But what if reason were at work in things themselves? It is very difficult for us to recover this intuition, this sense, because we're holding tight. Right? We're hiding in this modern world which tells us outside it's dangerous. An unbridled imagination is dangerous. We should avoid it. We need the machine, the mechanical reason, the man-made reason to keep the imagination in check. We need to compromise with the witch. We need to get a job, and then you go to church on Sunday, and that's when you have a little bit of the imagination going, flying around. Right? You let it loose a little bit, but not too much. On Monday morning, you go back and work for the witch. That is not the classical response to our ills. But that's where we stand. And at the same time, we're frustrated and we're driven to mistake our certainties for the good itself. So we're all fighting against each other for what we believe. That is pathetic. We're all under the empire of the witch who wants us to fight. Turns out in C.S. Lewis, the witch is the snake, the serpent, evil, the evil one. And this is where we stand, and that's why there's so much violence today. Religious people or people who are appealing to the Bible or perhaps some other sources will readily acknowledge that something is pulling the strings. A modern science might say, oh, well, but it's their passions and we're dealing with them. It's the forces of evolution or whatnot. In other words, there is no Aslan, there is no sun. We are compelled to serve the White Witch. Still worth reading for youth, but with this warning that C.S. Lewis is accepting a peculiarly modern compromise. We need not. There is no good reason to accept it, to bow before the will of the modern.